A warm welcome. This is episode 169 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and I have got a fantastic guest for you, my listeners and viewers, all the way from the good old US of A. It is veteran wrestling promoter of over 50 years, Mr. Herb Simmons, on Stu's Wrestling Podcast today. How are we, Herb?
Well, I'm so honored to be on Stu's podcast. You know, I followed every chance I get, and you have some amazing guests on there. I saw you had my dear friend Barbara Goodish, Luke Williams, and recently Tommy Wildfire Rich, and you know that's a trifecta there. I'll tell you.
Thank you so much for that as well. Thank you for the kind words. Now, predominantly, Herb, I'm here to talk about stuff that is coming up in subsequent months. And on February 9th, we have got the show SICW, February the 9th at the Belle Claire Fairgrounds in Illinois. So, yeah, I'd just love to hear about that show, which is coming up very, very soon next week.
Yeah, it's a big match. A lot of it has got to do over the storylines that's been told over the last 6 months. You know, we've got a tag team match, the Top Guns. Both of them, Brandon Beretta and Joey Vanetti, the Top Guns, were trained by the great Hall of Famer Bob Orton Jr. at his Ace Wrestling Academy. They graduated from there over a year ago, and they're setting the world on fire. They're going all over. They're going to be going for the SICW Tag Team Champions, which is held by the big team of the LA Hustlers, and they're managed by a deviant manager, a Lucky P. Esquire Larson, who stoops to no level to try to give him the advantage. So this is a no disqualification match because they've been back and forth. Usually the LA Hustlers have always found a way to get disqualified. But this time there will be no disqualification, and the winner walks away with those titles. And then the classic champion, that gold belt that's got all the legends' names from Sam Muchnick all the way through the NWA that held it here in St. Louis and performed in St. Louis, is on that belt. The Big Texan takes on the big man, Peyton Ayers, who is one part of the Devastation Incorporated, and it's headed up by another deviant individual. And I mean, he's been trying to buy SICW for the last year and a half, Stephen E. So, and then, of course, that match is so important. I brought in the first ever SICW champion, Danny Boy Hawkins, to officiate that match.
So it is all going on February 9th, Herb. And I'm sure, obviously, the fans are in for a treat as well. And it's just fantastic and good to see young talent as well.
Yeah, that's a Friday
coming through.
And that's a Friday night. Usually we do Saturday nights, but it's Friday, February the 9th because of the scheduling at the fairgrounds. But it will be great because that's when wrestling used to always be in St. Louis, was on Friday nights. So we're going to keep that old tradition alive and do a Friday night at the wrestling.
Amazing. Now, moving on to May, we've got Fanfest 2 coming up, and there's the graphic there. And yeah, look at the names. What a whole host of guys that the fans will get to see. And yeah, I wish I was in America. I really, really do, because I'd love to meet so many of the guys on there.
Yeah, I'd say Fanfest 2 is something people across the country say I'm crazy. Last May, we did Fanfest 1, and that's the first time ever that a Fanfest has been held in St. Louis. And like I said, it's a challenge. It's a logistical nightmare. Right now, I think we're up to about 58 of the legends, and wow. Still we're 4 months away. And I expect that number to increase because I'm getting calls every day, and it's due to people like yourself helping get the word out there. And I mean, I've got fans coming from Texas, from Colorado, from California, from Canada. They've already booked their rooms, so it's a star-studded card, and it's just not the Fan Fest. Every year we do the Bruiser Brody Memorial. Bruiser Brody was my dear friend in the business, and in fact, he was with us the weekend before he got murdered in 1988. And of course, his widow Barbara Goodish comes in every year for us, presents the winner of the Bruiser Brody Battle Royal that big beautiful trophy. But we have the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. We're inducting the class of 2024 this year. And then that evening, we do the Bruiser Brody Memorial, plus a whole card of SICW wrestling. So it's a great weekend this year. Excuse me, I've added in Bill Apter. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mr. Bill Apter.
I know Bill. I know Bill very well. I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but he's going to do his one-man show that Friday night for a special VIP party. So there's limited tickets available for that at the hotel. He'll do his one-man show, and of course he'll hang around afterwards, and he'll sing a little karaoke. And a lot of the boys are coming in that Friday, so they'll be there in the lounge area. But like I said, you have to have a ticket to get into there. But it's just going to be great. I'm excited about it. Of course, I'm also nervous about it because, you're trying to coordinate over 58 airfares. Nobody all comes in at one time. Last May, I think I made 48 trips one way from the airport. And that Sunday, I had to get them back out of town. So it's a logistical nightmare, but it was fun. And I think that's why everybody has said, oh, you got to do another one. You got to do another one. So we're doing it. And it's Friday, May 17th and Saturday, May 18th.
I wish I was over there. I truly do, because we're not getting conventions to the level that we used to get. I don't know whether that's due to international airfare and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously I've been over to the States years ago, Herb, for WrestleMania. But, family life and stuff like that now. But yeah, I would love to be there for that. That's a bit of me, honestly.
Yeah, well, and when you look at the crowd that we've got coming in, the group, Sergeant Slaughter, Abdullah the Butcher, Tim Storm from the NWA, Haku, Wildfire Tommy Rich, Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, Teddy Long, Coco Beware, Dr. Tom Pritchard, Downtown Bruno, the Rock and Roll Express, the Godfather, like I said, Manny Fernandez, Bill Apter, the Glow Girls are going to be here with us. Tito Santana, when you put Tito Santana's picture on a poster, you got the best of the best. Greg Gagne from the AWA will be with us. Rip Rogers, Greg the Hammer Valentine. Just that list right there is worth the price of admission to come in,
So many guys from my childhood there as well. The guys, obviously, early... 1990 when I started watching WWF here in the UK. It's just I would be spending a lot of money that weekend if I was over there with you guys. Let me tell you.
Well, I appreciate that, and like I said, it's fun. And last May, everything went off, knock on wood, without a hitch. People who ordered their tickets in advance, we had a line set up for them where they could get in instead of having to wait till that day. And that's what I encourage, is to go online and buy your tickets at www.sicw.org. It's there at the bottom of the flyer you got up there. That's the easiest way to do it. That way there, you come that morning or that Friday evening, if you bought a ticket for that, you get an armband, you get all your information in a packet, and you go in and start browsing around, and we'll have vendors set up already. I think we got about 10 vendors. It'll be out in the main hallway. And they're everything from podcasts, from people selling their goods and wares or shirts. But if you wait until that day to come, you may stand in line for a while to get in. So I encourage you to go online and buy your tickets early.
Absolutely. It's going to be fantastic on May 17th and May 18th there in St. Louis. Absolutely fantastic. And as you say, fans coming from across the border in Canada, Texas, far and wide to come to the show. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me with the litany of guys you've got coming in.
Yeah, it's like I said, and it's just not the Fanfest. I mean, if you want to see a full great wrestling card that evening, and the Bruiser Brody, Barbara Goodish always somehow gets involved, and we have to keep the legacy of Bruiser Brody alive, and that's kind of what I pledged her to do, and we've done that every year. And like I said, Bill Apter, his show, that's worth the price of admission. If you've never seen his one-man show, he's going to tell road stories. He's going to show some films, and he'll do his imitations of Dusty Rhodes and a bunch of the other wrestlers. Because, you got to remember, if it wasn't for Bill Apter, a lot of these guys, legends, their careers wouldn't be made, because he followed them all over the world. taking pictures and doing articles and putting them in those magazines that we rush to the drugstores to get every month that they come out. So he helped make a lot of these guys' careers for him. He wasn't in there taking the bumps and the bruises, but he was taking the pictures of them, and he was keeping us at home informed of where they were and how they were doing.
The Aftermags, that's what I will say. That's what they were referenced as, the old wrestling magazines with Bill, weren't they?
Oh, yeah. And there you can see behind me Sam Muchnick.
Absolutely.
Legend. Former national original gentleman in the middle is Larry Matisek, was Sam's protege. Mm-hmm. He started working for Sam when he was 16 years old. And basically that was the only job he ever had. And then, of course, the Bruiser Brody, the greatest of all time.
I tell you what, Larry did a great job with Bruiser's book. I read it last year. I told Barbara, because obviously there was bits from Barbara as well within the book. Fantastically written. You know, I knew a lot about Bruiser prior to reading the book, but I also learned a lot, especially, you know, how much he was on the road. If he was in Japan, you know, doing the territories and stuff like that. You know, he's away from the family, wasn't he, so much, like a lot of guys were. Still are to this day, aren't they, modern wrestlers? But I learned a lot from the book here, but it was so well written.
And what I liked about it is that it told the two stories. It told the story of Bruiser Brody, and then it told the story of Frank Goodish, the father, the husband, the brother. It was just the way it was put together. It was so great, and I know Barbara was scared when I was sitting there the day Larry had called her and said, "Hey, you want to help write a book?" And she said, "I don't know how to write a book." And but it turned out great, and she's a princess, I'll tell you. I can't wait to get her back in here. And we go to Cauliflower Alley every year together, and up to the Tragus Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa, up there with our good friend Jerry Briscoe and Troy Peterson, who runs the Impact Pro Wrestling, and that's always a great time also. And of course, CAC is I don't know how much you know about that, but it's a Cauliflower Alley Club, and you know, it's an organization close to my heart. They help the boys when they're down and out, and people like Darla Staggs and Barbara Goodish and Pam Morrison, they're all involved in it. J.J. Dillon's daughter, and I can't say enough for what they help do. B. Brian Blair is the president, CEO, and Rich England and people like that. Royal Duncan. So it's an organization that if you want more information on it, just go to caulifloweralley.club.org and you can find it. And I encourage everybody. I'm kind of like the ambassador for it, and I like to try to get the word out there. There shouldn't be a worker out there that's not a member of that, because I tell them it's like a supplemental insurance policy. Something happens to you, they can help you out.
It's an amazing organization, as you said, and I'm glad you're involved as well with all your years, and that, you know, the boys who you had wrestling for you, and just fantastic. You know, thank you, Herb. Thank you for, you know, from us wrestling fans, for everything you've done.
Well, it's been my passion for 51 years in February, and in fact, it's just coming around the corner here, and it's been a heck of a ride. I can tell you, I've got to meet so many of the greats because of those three gentlemen in the back there. Without them, there is no Herb Simmons in the wrestling business. There is no SICW. But there's not too many guys out there that you can name that I haven't either had conversation with, or they've worked for me, or we've done shows together. And like I said, it's a good feeling when you can pick up a phone and call a Ricky Steamboat, or, you know, a Jim Cornette or somebody like that, and get their assistance.
Incredible. Now, Herb, prior to this interview, obviously the last week or so, I've had some photos from you, so I'd like to pull some photos up, because I'm sure you've got so many, but you did send me some. So yeah, I'm gonna put some up of just your memories of the guys. Obviously, some of them have left us, some are still here, but yeah, I'm gonna pull some photos up now, because I can't wait to hear stories about the guys you've worked with over the years.
Another great guy right there, Ted DiBiase, the million. I knew him before he was the $1 Million Man. When he first come to St. Louis, was one of the greats. The fans loved him, and we're friends to this day. And years ago, I had a booking for Ric Flair, and at the last minute, Ric Flair pulled out on us, and I had about 24 hours to find a replacement. And I called Teddy up, and I had talked to him previously, and So he said, "Oh, you got me coming in pinch hitting for Rick, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, I need you right away." And we got him an air ticket and got him in here, and he took the place by storm. So I can't say enough about the $1 Million Man, my friend Ted DiBiase.
One of the best gimmicks, from where he came from the territories and that. When you say the $1 Million Man. Now, as a kid, I hated him, which is that was what he was there to do. But obviously, through the years, getting older, I then appreciated what he was actually able to do. But yeah, as a kid, Herb, oh my word, I detested the man. So he was booked. Yeah. He was booked correctly. He worked the gimmick correctly, and
he played the part.
Absolutely.
I've heard the story where when Vince first pitched the idea to him, he gave him the spending money and he said, "I want you to play this part 24 hours a day. I want you to go out. I want you to buy people dinner. I want you to just be the $1 Million Man." And he said, "Man, I loved it." All he had to do was bring receipts in, and he got reimbursed. But he actually lived that part of the $1 Million Man.
Amazing. We were eating in the same place, in a burger place, like a diner place, and he was in there with somebody. And I said to the lads, he sat over there, but I didn't want to bother him. I just acknowledged him. I didn't want to start. Can I have a photo, Ted? I was very mindful that he was having his time. I know a lot of fans don't hesitate, but I left him here. I was like, I just acknowledged him because I thought it's his own time now.
Yeah, that's and that's how he is. You respected him, and I bet he appreciated that, because these guys get hounded and they don't mind it at times, but they got to have their space, So you have to be respectful of that.
Absolutely. Now another photo here, Herb. Well, what can be said about this man? One of the hardest men ever in the wrestling business, Mr. Harley Race, champion, just incredible.
Greatest of all times. I've seen Harley take on the best of the best, and I had the honor of him working with me, coming in and doing special appearances for me. That was after he had his injury. Quick story on him: I had a show. He was at a casino with me, and about 6 months later, I had a show at a minor league ball stadium that I had him booked for, and he had taken a fall at home and had a bad injury. And he called me up about the weekend before and said, "Hey, I'm going to be there, Herb." He says, "Even if I got to ride in the back of my pickup truck." And I said, "No, Harley, you're not coming." I said, "You stay at home." But that's just the type of guy he was. Another great friend. I miss him dearly. I have guys in my locker room that was actually trained by him right now. Dennis McCausey goes by a Telecon, Superstar Steve Fender, people like that learned how to do their business under the tutelage of Harley Race.
Just incredible. Again, what a tough man. And obviously, you've alluded to Mr. Bruiser Brody, obviously prior, but yeah, some more on Bruiser, and any good Bruiser stories, Herb? I'm sure you got many because you're around him a lot.
Yeah, he was a great friend, and I loved him so much. I had two of my dogs. One was a Belgian Malinois I called Brody, and my other one's Bruiser, who was still with us. So I had Bruiser and Brody running around the house all the time. We lost Brody, but I still have Bruiser with me. And but the best story with him was when I'd heard all the horror stories from other promoters about how don't trust him. He'll stand you up. He'll screw you. And so I told Larry, I said, I've heard all these crazy stories. Dick the Bruiser told me, don't trust him. And Larry says, listen to me, trust me, he'll be here. So we book a big show at the Belclair Fairgrounds, the same place that I'm running now. And this was back in the late 70s. And we book a big show. He's the biggest thing that's coming to the area. He's big. He's all over television. And night of the show, the place is packed wall to wall, treetop tall. And it's a big open building at a fairgrounds. And they have a pavilion on a hangover on the side of the building where you can park cars at also. And I'm out there pacing that area back and forth. The fans inside are doing the Brody chant, and it gets to be about 7:45. No Brody, no Larry. And gets, about 5 minutes to 8, still no Brody. I thought, God dang it, I got stung. I've got several thousand people inside this building. My wife comes out the side door and says, "Hun, do you hear what's going on in there?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "What are we going to do?" I said, "It's not what we're going to do. You're going to have to go back in there and tell him he's not coming." And about that time, I see a car pulling in way down at the entrance gate. And I'm looking, and it looks like it's Larry's car. And here they come pulling up. I had a private spot for him to park. And this giant gets out of the car. He's got a pair of cut-off shorts on, his tennis shoes, and he's putting his hair in a ponytail. And he walks up to me and sticks out his hand, and he says, "I bet you thought I wasn't coming, didn't you, big boy?" And I said, "No, I wasn't worried about it at all." But I was sweating bullets. So, and from that time on, we developed a friendship that lasted until 1988. Anytime I called him, he was there. Gave me great advice for the business, how to negotiate with the workers, because there are workers out there that will try to take advantage of you, and promoters, and also the talent. But he taught me some of the tricks of the trades, as we call it.
Bless his soul as well. Again, just an absolute travesty, Herb, what happened there. An absolute travesty. And obviously, I've watched Dark Side of the Ring. I obviously knew about it prior to that. But yeah, you only have to hear from Tony Atlas. We know exactly what had gone on in that changing room, in that shower.
Well, I have people all the time. They've been telling me for years, "Herb, you need to write a book." And I said, "Nah, I'll leave that to the experts." Larry Matisek used to always start putting pen to paper. You not only in the wrestling business, you've done so much in all the other careers, your day jobs, your law enforcement, your firefighting. I ran an ambulance service for 30 plus years. And so he said people would be interested in that. I said, no, they wouldn't. So about 6, 7, 8 months ago, I decided to start doing that. And I've told people that a lot of people didn't know that Frank Brody and I was getting ready to start a business together. And Barbara has told that story a little bit, but it was really nobody's business. I never have discussed it until she let it out on a podcast one day. And but I tell people that if I ever get the book finished, I'll be able to put in there what I know really took place with that terrible situation in 1988. But I really tear myself apart about it, because I can only imagine.
Him.
I mean, him and Larry and I had talked about that whole ordeal on what was he thought was going to happen, but that was never going to be it. And but like I said, we'll see if I can get the book done. And it's something that you just can't pick up and do in one day. And so we'll see how that goes.
I look forward to it, and I hope it does come to fruition, because I will get the book.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, you're two people that told me that. So my wife and you have told me they'd buy the book. So
there you go. 2 sales. There you go. We're off.
Yeah.
We're off to the races with that, Herb. We're off to the races.
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, another man who we lost not too long ago, Mr. Terry Funk.
Oh, Terry, the Prince of Princes. Prince. I mean, he just another guy I just miss every day, because I could pick up the phone and call him and, just talk about the business. And if I had him in, it was always great. One of the best times I had was with him and Cowboy Bob Orton in the car. And we were going to Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And I was lucky I didn't get a ticket for driving under the speed limit, because I didn't want to get there real quick. I wanted to hear them two just jabber and tell stories and rib one another and hear all the ribs that they pulled on people. And it was just great. And I respected that man. And him and his brother, both Dory. I talked to Dory on it very frequently, him and his wife, Marty. But the Funks were just a big name in St. Louis, or anywhere they were at. But in St. Louis, they were really special, especially when you had them and the Briscoes against one another. But I miss Terry dearly.
Just again, the number of years he was in the business, Herb, and putting the next wave of talent over, building people up, man. You know, when you look back through that and what he was able to do, even more latterly with Flair in the NWA in the late 80s. Sorry.
80s, yeah. Well, one of his things, and that him and I talked about for a couple of years, he wanted to have that one last match again for about the 1,000th time. He had so many of them, but what he wanted me to book was him and Flair for one last match. And I said, Terry, you know, and I knew his health wasn't good at that time, but he would tell me, yes, he said, book it, I can get it, I'll do it, I'll be there. And
it's like when we got cut off.
Terry was one of those guys, I checked on him all the time, and he was one of the guys that would always call me to check on Larry Matisek when Larry was health was failing, because Terry loved St. Louis, and he loved Larry Matisek because when he first started coming to St. Louis, Larry was a young man, and he could see that he was going to be Sam's right-hand guy in St. Louis. And so when Larry health started failing, I would keep him informed, and Terry would call on a regular basis to check on him. And so I thought that was real type of guy he was. And when we would bring him in to wrestle or even to just do autograph signatures, what a guy he was. Just great.
Absolutely fantastic. Another guy, just incredible what he got to do. And again, going to move on. Here he is, Mr. the Lariat, Mr. Stan Hansen. Again, obviously, him and Frank obviously were intertwined, weren't they, with Japan, etc. So, yeah, just Stan Hansen, man, because love him, absolutely love him.
Yo, yeah, and a guy that's got great stories to tell, and he's like all of us as we're getting older. Sometimes we tell the same stories over and over, but I tell you, each time I hear them, they're just fascinating. And him and I went to Waterloo, Iowa, went to Vegas together. And the one trip to Vegas, we sat in the TGI Fridays at the hotel. We actually ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. And the only time we got up to go was to the restroom. And each meal, a different waitress came up, and finally at dinner we said, Herb, he said, we've been sitting here all day. And it was just phenomenal to sit there and listen to what him and Frank did when Frank switched over in Japan, and the conversations that they had about that. And it was just Stan just a great guy. I just talked to him the other day. He's having a little health issues, but he's going to be okay. He's a tough bird. Unbelievable.
Again, just these guys that they were just built differently. You know, and I'm not knocking the guys of today. I know the business has changed. I'm not one of these. I watch a lot of modern wrestling as well here, but these guys, I think younger guys could learn so much, especially the psychology side from the likes of Stan Hansen.
Well, you know, I tell the guys, because I bring in these legends who are still with us on a regular basis that I can for our shows. And I tell the young guys, even the ones that are in the Bob Orton Academy, if you're not sitting there in the dressing room picking the brains and the likes of a Ricky Steamboat or a Tito Santana or a Luke Williams or Abdullah the Butcher or whoever it may be, or Ted DiBiase, shame on you, because you're missing a golden opportunity. Because it's in 51 years, I had one guy get a little obnoxious with me and try telling me, well, you ought to pay me more money instead of bringing in these old legends, you know, because I'm out there doing all the bumps and everything. And I, real nice and polite, I just said, you know, if I think about it, you should be paying me, because I'm giving you an education that you can't get anyplace else. You may be going out there currently and entertaining the fans, but what you're sitting back, and he was the type that he got his pictures taken with all of the legends I brought in, and he's got a whole library full of pictures at my expense, but then he's going to tell me I should pay him more money. So he didn't stay around too long with me.
It's just like, why? It's not hard to fathom, is it, as a young talent? You know, like you say, you should be a sponge. You should be a sponge around all them guys. So he was missing the point, evidently. Yeah. Evidently.
Well, you know what I tell the guys when I've been documented on other podcasts that I've been asked to do. when people say the business has changed, that's true to a degree, but if you look at it, a headlock's still a headlock. Arm drag is still an arm drag. What has really changed the biggest in this business is the difference in the mentality of the talent. It's called ego, a 3-letter word. This younger generation has an ego because they watch a Monday Night Raw and a Tuesday night this and a Wednesday night this, and the oversaturation of the business is what they do. And then all of a sudden they think they can sit there in front of that 55-inch screen TV and watch this, and they think they're a worker themselves. Instead of getting into the gym somewhere, the academy, whether it be Bob Orton's academy or down at Harley Race's training academy or down to Dory Funk's training academy. If you really want this, you gotta put in the time and you gotta put in the effort. And with all of that, yes, you got to put in the money to do it. That's if you want to do it. Now, if you want to play at it and be in your backyard, that's strictly up to you. I don't have nothing against that. But don't come to me trying to say you're a professional wrestler, because the first thing I ask you is, who trained you? And if you tell me, well, my brother and I went out in the backyard or we played on the trampoline, that's not being trained. Tell me that you've been trained by Bob Orton, Harley Race, Dory Funk Jr., whoever, Ed Sharkey, people like that. Then we're going to talk, because I know you've been trained the right way.
So they're having a similar problem here with the UK independents. So it's guys going to fly-by-night schools, not being taught properly. Because I know of a guy who runs a promotion here, and he's training them in the correct manner, and he's actually sounded off about it. Like he says, at the end of the day, it all boils down to safety, knowing what you're doing. And that he said there's so many unsafe guys and unsafe working environments here in the UK.
You're right. And that's kind of what we have here, because we're right on the border of Missouri, where I'm at. I'm in Illinois, and Missouri has a state athletic commission that governs the workers. They have to be licensed. Illinois used to have the strictest athletic commission in the country. And then when Vince started running in, he challenged that, and he got them to basically deregulate it, which I think was a big mistake. There needs to be some form of regulation. At one time, I was the only resident of the state of Illinois that held a valid wrestling promoter's license. And back then, you didn't have all of these promotions that were popping up on every corner. And we could always see when somebody got their income tax checks back within that April, May, June, they'd go out and buy a ring, and they'd go out and rent a building, and they'd run from town to town, and they thought they were a wrestling promotion. Well, they lasted about 5-6 months, but what they did is they went in and killed those towns. And then when people would call me and say, we'd like for you to come in and try to help us, because that's what we do. About 95% of our business is working with nonprofits, police departments, fire departments, organizations, to help them raise funds. Well, then when they would call me, and I'd say, well, didn't you just have a show 6 months ago? Well, yeah, but it didn't really go over good. Well, how many people did you draw? Well, they had about 40, 50 people. I said, okay, now you want me to come in there. What makes you think that the same amount of people, if you drew 40, 50 people after they saw a crappy show, now you probably will draw 20 people. But because what I tell them is, you got to wait at least a year to let that town rebuild, and let me do some advertisement there and try to get people to follow us. And then they can see. I'll give you an example. This last match we had in Belleville 3 weeks ago, we had people from an organization in Missouri that came over and watched it. And they just called me last night and said, we want you to come and do a show for us. We've had ABC, whatever the organization was, do a show. Nothing real bad about them, other than it was the minor league against the major league is what we saw what you do. And I'm not saying anything about the other company, because they can do what they can do. But that just goes to show you these organizations want the cream of the crop, and they want a good show. Yeah. So, and I try to work with all organizations that want to. I've only got about 3 or 4 that want to work together. That's the other thing. Back in the territorial days, you had the guys that worked together. Sam Muchnick was the peacekeeper, especially he controlled that NWA title. Nowadays, these new organizations, they don't want to work together. They don't care. They want to run in your backyard. And that's because they see we draw 400 or 500 people to a show, and they think they can come in 10 miles down the road and those same 400 or 500 people are going to go there. They may for the first time. And if you don't give them the best show, you've lost them. You know, I got families that's been following me for 40 years. So, and I think that says the quality of show that you run.
It speaks volumes, Herb. It speaks volumes. You know what I mean? People know your years in the business, and then it's crazy. I just find it baffles me. Like you said, it's just how these fly by night promotions are running now. There's no thought processes. They don't know. You got to know business. I know there's other stuff to it. They don't obviously know. They haven't got the acumen, have they?
Well, and I've got the 3 or 4 promotions that I work with. They're smart enough to understand that I'm an old man. I'm 70 years old. I'm not going to be around here forever. Even though I do it, we're booking shows all the way to the end of the year already. And those 3 or 4 other promotions are smart enough to know that, hey, we're going to pick Herb's brain because they're younger guys. They've been in it a few years, but nothing like I have been. And I every time they want to talk about it, I'm willing to tell them because, the fear that I have and several other people, or I should say a lot of other people, what happens to the old school wrestling when Herb Simmons is gone or if I retire? Because there's nobody doing it like we do. There's nobody does the weekly TV show like we're doing with the old style studio setting to where, we will have interviews at ringside and we have the beatdowns at ringside. So that's any of your old TV studios that you'd watch anywhere, you would see that. And that's what we do.